Hello, welcome. Thank you everyone so much for coming. My name is Daniel. I'm one of the graduate assistants at University Student Apartments. I'm excited to be with y'all. And we have two really awesome folks today who are going to share some information about gardening. So thank you for being here. So we have Sam Simonich. Did I say your name?
Yep, Simonich.
And then Elle-Rose Knudsen. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Wonderful. And they're both stewards at the Edible Campus Gardens, and they're going to share some information about gardening, maybe some tips, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end. So with that, I'll let them take over. Thank you so much for being here.
I will share my screen. Oh, wait, you disabled screen? Can you enable it? A cute little PowerPoint for us.
I can share my screen, so I'll do that. Just kidding, I can't.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can.
I thought since the button existed, it would let me work, or it would work for me.
Are you able to share your screen now?
There we go. Here we go. Okay. All right, we will start at the beginning. Okay, everyone can see this. We're good. Lovely. So we're from the Edible Campus Gardens, and from what I've been told, the community gardens, we've never seen them. Do y'all have like plots of land, like individual ones? Yeah, cool. Okay, so these are going to be like lots of basics about like what likes to be planted together and things like that. So if you have like more in-depth questions, we can do those at the end, or also feel free to interrupt us. So
I can talk about this. Okay, so seed packets. If you ever buy seeds from like any store, they'll probably come in a packet that looks similar to this on the backside. The front will probably just say what kind of seed you're looking at. And we just have some handy little examples of what you might see on a seed packet. So planting depth is 2 to 3 times the seed width. So you plant them like not super far down. And when I plant seeds, sometimes you can just like poke a little hole in the ground and drop the seed in, or dig, like even using just like a pencil or something, you can dig a tiny little trench and then drop the seeds in and then cover them up. Usually it's about like 1/4 inch to 1 inch is how deep you're going to plant the seeds. And then let's see, we've got, okay, when to sow. It depends on the zone and hardiness of the plant. We'll talk more about zones in a second, but they should say on the seed packet the good or the best times to sow them. And sometimes you'll have plants that you can harvest multiple times a year, or like just continually harvest, so you can plant them early, or you can plant them really like any time, and just if the earlier you plant them, the more you'll be able to harvest from them. And then there's thinning. So this says like thin to 18 to 24 inches on that seed packet on the right. So that's saying like once the seeds are established and there's some plants growing, you can see which ones are doing the best and maybe choose those. And you want ultimately for the plants to be about 18 to 24 inches apart in this example. This is just so they have room to grow to their full size and they're not competing too much with each other. Let's see, and we have written down many seeds too small to plant one at a time. Okay, make shallow trough. Sorry, I don't know how to read. Make a shallow trough and sprinkle them after sprouted. Pull every few, leaving the largest ones. Yeah. So it's basically a way to preserve the plants that are doing the best and also make sure they're not competing with each other too much. It also has the maturity, like 75 to 80 days for this one. That gives you an idea of when you might be able to harvest from the plant based on when you plant them. And this one says like direct sow after danger of frost. There are some things you can plant various times of the year, but a lot of things that you have to wait until nighttime temperatures are like 40 degrees or above. to be comfy planting them or be able to have a way to keep them warm. Yeah, I think we're good there. Any questions on that? Sick.
In good old Utah. And we are zoned in this little picture over here. If this dot is exactly where we are, city tends to run a little bit warmer than everywhere else in the valley, just because all of the mature trees in the buildings kind of keep the city temperature like higher temperature all throughout the year. Like come up sooner, the trees bloom sooner in Salt Lake City than like in the suburbs. So we're usually 6A, B, maybe 7. So it says on your seed packet, you'll follow those. And then here is the last average frost. So it varies by year, but this is like a general ballpark of when you should expect the last frost to be. Also, we can talk about this later too. If you plant things and then you realize that the frost is coming, it's not the end of the world. There are definitely things that you can do to save your plants. Like I've put tomatoes in many times, and then like a really late frost comes, and all you really need is a bucket to put over the top, and that'll pretty much save it. So next, these are cute little average ballpark, just by the way. Plants are pretty forgiving, so whenever you put them in the ground, as long as you're not like way off planting in December, you're probably good. So
one thing that I have to remind myself with gardening and stuff is that the plants really want to grow, and like they are forgiving a lot of the time. And also sometimes they're going to not grow no matter what you try to do. So I feel like it's good to go easy on yourself and realize that sometimes the plants are going to do what they want to do. But there's also some things, I don't remember if we have this written out anywhere, but some things that have always worked well for me that I would recommend starting with, like beets, carrots, lettuce, or like spinach. All of those tend to work really well for me reliably. So I would say if you're a new gardener looking for something easy to grow, those are my recommendations. Also onions, like those are low maintenance. And so as you can see here, it's spring is really the time to do a lot of your seeding. Early April and late April have a lot of things, but then there's still plenty of things you can plant later in June, July, August. And also if you have greenhouse space, then you can just go ham and plant other times of the year.
great. Okay, so if you don't want to plant by seed, sometimes that can be intimidating and it takes like a long time, and you gotta be careful of the frost. And oh nope, go back. You can buy starts. These are actually, I found this picture from our greenhouse in our like Google Drive, our garden Google Drive or whatever. And they basically just come in these little like plastic nursery pots. Smith's right now has a ton. Like I drove past the Smith's on 33rd today, and their parking lot was just full of starts. So these are nice just because they're already well established. Their roots are pretty like netted together, which means they're nice and healthy. So basically, if you go to the store and get these, you just need to be like mindful of not placing them too close together, because when the seeds come up, you can like thin them out as much as you want. But once this is in the ground, there's not much you can do with that. So it depends on the plant. Tomatoes can get quite large, so you want to give them more space. Pepper plants, you can give a little less space. But basically, you put your hand over the top with the like stem going through your fingers, tip it upside down, squeeze out the bottom, let it fall. And then you want the hole to come up to like the bottom of where the plant goes into the soil where the start was. Sometimes some plants are more forgiving than others, but if you plant too deep, like if you plant the stem too deep, the plant will actually die. So you want to kind of stay where it came out of the ground in the first place. And then just packing the soil in around it, not too much on top, not too little. When I was a little kid, I would like to make the little like well around them so that the water stays in, especially if you're on a hill or something and you water it and all the water just runs off. That's not going to do much for your plant. So you can like just make like a little moat around, or what's the opposite of a moat? A little tower around, and that'll keep the water in. So that is always fun to do.
Also, one thing for me with planting starts is just that sometimes after watering them, the soil level gets really low. So sometimes I have to like pack up the soil again and then water it again.
Mm-hmm.
And then it should be good after that.
Yeah, that's a good point. The water will make everything settle in.
Yeah. You also could consider, if you're interested, this is totally up to you, using some kind of fertilizer product. There are like a million available. There are plenty of certified organic products, if you care about that you can use to just fortify your soil a bit. And like that also might help if you're a new gardener, make your plants a little happier. Okay, so companion planting. This is planting different varieties with each other. And we've got some of the benefits of companion planting. It can deter pests. It can attract beneficial insects. Can regulate shade. Natural support of like the plants can support each other. Soil nutrient regulation, that one's super awesome. And weed suppression. Soil nutrient regulation, one issue with monoculture or planting the same, like a bunch of the same plant next to each other or like in the same plot year over year, is that the soil can get depleted of nutrients. And having a variety of plants, we love biodiversity here. Having a variety of plants can really help keep the soil in good shape year after year. Okay, so we have a list of plants that deter pests: basil, sage, mint, garlic, tansy. I don't even know what that is. Nasturtium and calendula. Also, these are all just such lovely plants to have. If you haven't seen or heard of calendula before, it's like one of the most beautiful flowers, I think. It's just so bright and springy, and it's edible, so that's cool.
Here, I have a picture of tansy.
Yay. Oh, I love that. Yay. I love that I'm learning from our presentation.
There's a little asterisk by mint and tansy, mostly because they're really aggressive growers. So you wouldn't want to put them in where like seeds are like just starting to come up, because they will outcompete all of those. Tansy is actually invasive in some states. I don't think in Utah, but I wouldn't let it get out of hand. So they're really prolific, which is great because you'll have a full bed in no time. But if you wanted something else in that bed, just keep in mind. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. And then ones that...
Oh yeah, what's your question?
So it's okay to plant mint, right? Because somebody mentioned that we shouldn't do it in the plots. So I thought it's like not
okay. That might be a suggestion that's just specific to the place that you're planting. And I think it likely could be because mint grows so easily. Like in my parents' backyard, they have mint just all over the place because it just really wants to grow.
Right.
So like in general, it's okay to have it, but check with the people who are telling you what to do.
Yeah, I was gonna say I will ask I'll clarify that. I know some people asked that on the Facebook and someone said not to do it because we do have it in our community herb garden, but I don't see why we couldn't do it. So I'll get some clarification on that.
Yeah, that's actually what I'm referring to. Thank you.
Yep, I'll get some clarification and then I'll email it or post it on the Facebook page.
Awesome.
I'm curious, what do the asterisks mean for mint and tansy?
It was just a warning that they're really aggressive growers. So if you plant them somewhere, basically expect them to take over if you don't keep on top of it. So that was like a caution.
Do we have any other questions right now?
I'm good. Thanks.
Sweet. Okay. So plants that might draw pests: parsley, poached eggplants.
And here, I'll look up a picture of that one too. And by draw pests, it means they draw pests away from the vegetables.
There
So
we go.
like the aphids and white flies and all those nasty things you don't want on your actual vegetables, they prefer to eat plants like this. And so if you plant them near, they'll prefer those and then stay away from your vegetables.
Also, if you're looking to deter pests, marigold is a great option. We have, in the past, we've had vegetable, like beds of vegetables that we just put like marigolds around, and it's seemed pretty beneficial for us.
Those are poached eggplants. Sorry, there's like a glare. But they're really nice, yellowy. There you go.
And then plants that draw pollinators, calendula, borage, sunflowers, chamomile. And of course, there are more plants that fall in all of these categories. In fact, if you're interested in drawing pollinators, there are things you can look up specific plants that are good for that. You can even get like a certified monarch garden certification thing. I don't know exactly how it works, but a friend of mine loves monarch butterflies. And so she has a monarch certified garden.
I put a link in the final slide in the sources to Mill Creek Gardens guide to doing a pollinator garden. So if anyone is interested in that, I have that source linked at the end.
Will you also share these slides with us?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'll send them to Taylor.
Great.
There also is a pollinator garden on campus. So if you want to check that out, go for it. Sam, do you want to talk about the friend versus foe thing?
Yeah. So when I was like brushing up on this a little bit, doing some research, because I had even heard that there's like for companion gardens, there's like plants that you should never plant together. But there is a lot more evidence for like a good companionships than bad, except for the black walnut trees, which actually like put out a chemical for their root system to kind of deter other things from growing as like a competition thing. The only thing that you would really need to think about if you're worried about like plants competing on the same level, plants that you don't want to plant together, is like the depth of their roots. So you would just need to like look up kind of where the root mass is going to lay. And if they're all like within the first inch of soil, there might be some trouble, but I have never had any experiences where I've planted something next to something else and it has like gone terribly. So I would say you're probably good with whatever you do, so long as you don't have a black walnut tree.
Yeah, cool. I was just gonna say,
No, go ahead.
we might have this on the next slide. The Three Sisters is a really common combo for companion planting. It's corn, squash, and beans, like climbing beans. It's just like a classic combo that originated in Mesoamerica, and they do really well together. So that's always a fun place to start. Also, like, they're just good. Like corn, squash, and beans are a big part of my diet, so would recommend.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that. I didn't have it anywhere explicitly. I'm not going to go through all of this because it's a lot. And this is not like the end of the list. So I also have a link to the resource where I got a lot of these companionships. So you can look through that and get all of the rest of them if you want. But a lot of them have some that like draw different nutrients from the soil, like asparagus and tomatoes don't draw the same minerals out of the soil. So it's good to plant those together. Marigold. Pollinators deters pests. So all of them kind of follow that same pattern.
Also, this is a random side note, but we had asparagus growing in our garden a couple years ago. I think we still have some, but it's kind of scraggly. And just like raw asparagus straight from the garden is one of the best things I've ever tasted. So if you're interested in that, I would definitely recommend trying asparagus in your garden.
Do you usually start asparagus from seed?
I would be nervous about starting it from seed, honestly.
Yeah.
But I don't know where ours came from. I think it takes several years to get to like where you would actually eat it if you're
Mhm.
starting it from seed.
Yeah, I remember having some in our backyard, but I have no idea how I got there.
Yeah.
Okay, we will move on.
Sweet. Okay, vertical gardening. We have lots of pictures of examples of this. Some benefits of this is it can free up space and circulate air better, and there's less crouching to harvest. That one's super nice. There are plenty of ways you can create some vertical movement in your garden. We have at the Edible Campus Gardens, we have a ton of different kinds of trellising. We also have like tomato cages we use and like fences and stuff. So you can get creative with it and just provide structures for your plants to climb up or to be supported by. Some examples of things you can use are bamboo sticks, old ladders. Oh, we have some like, I think I've used parts of old, I don't even know how to describe what they are. They're like the things we would sift compost with. I think we've used those to trellis with before. 2x4s, puppy fencing, cages, pallets, sticks and wire. We have just like some stakes. We just put out like stakes with twine tied between them, and that's good enough. And you can just check on your plants every once in a while and kind of assist them to be like resting on the things, and they'll grow where they want to.
Yeah, something else, if you don't want to like buy extra materials and you're interested in growing like corn or sunflower, last side, a lot of the beans, sunflowers and corn, they almost provide natural supports for them to crawl up and like go vertical. So if you want it to be like totally only plants in your garden, sunflowers and corn are a great way to go for support. That Taylor sent me, someone was asking about shade and how to like navigate that in gardens. And I'll be honest, when I got that question, I didn't know the answer at first. So I did a phone a friend, called my mom, because she is way more of an expert than I am. She was talking about how in Utah, specifically because we were at such a high elevation, the like radiation from the sun is a lot stronger. Like you'll get sunburnt more easily at these high elevations, and the plants actually get a lot more from it as well. And so where a lot of like websites say that your vegetables need like 10-ish to 10 to 12 hours of sunlight every day, in Utah, that's not necessarily the case. So she recommended that as long as your plant is getting 6 to 7 hours, if you're worried about too much shade, you're probably good. Whether that sunlight is in the morning or if it's in the evening, even if it's at those low angles, 6 to 7 hours will like do wonders. If you are looking to, like if you're noticing like sunburn on your plants, specifically on like leafy greens and cold season vegetables, like peas are a good one. Beans can tolerate a little bit more shade. So if you are planting something really tall and you know that this one area of your plot is going to be more shaded throughout the day, those are a good thing to put there. But overall, like dappled shade isn't going to do that much harm. We have, when I was growing up, we had a huge columnar oak tree in the middle of our garden. And so no matter where the sun was in the sky, at least some part of our garden was shaded, and we never had any issues with it. So I don't know who asked that question, but did that clear up? Did that answer?
That wasn't my question, but yeah.
Well, if you want to clarify your question, I can try to.
Oh no, I'm saying that I didn't ask this question, but your answer was convincing. Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, I'm glad. Thank you.
Another thing about shade in general, if you're worried your plants are getting too much sun or too much heat even during the summer, you can create shade for them, whether you're using natural things or like we've set up little shade tunnels for our plants before. I think we did that last year. We had some peppers. Yeah, we had some peppers that just were having too much sun. So we just had, there are lots of different ways you can do it. We had these like C-shaped metal pole sort of things, and you just like stick them in the ground, a couple of them, around the sides of the bed, and then you can place some sort of shade fabric over it, and you can find all kinds of fabric that's made for it, or be creative and make your own. We're all about like experimenting with stuff and kind of makeshift solutions at the gardens.
Well, that's the best part of your garden. You have total, well, maybe not total control because plants sometimes have a mind of their own, but you're definitely going to play.
Yeah.
Okay, tomatoes. Also, this little tomato icon, I couldn't resist. Even it was so sad, but I thought it was the cutest, so I put it on. So,
Never mind. Go ahead.
there are two different types of tomatoes, determinate and indeterminate. Determinate tomatoes, it basically has to do with their size and how much they grow. So determinate tomatoes will grow to a specified size and then stay that way. They're generally smaller just because they don't grow for as long. So you don't generally need a cage. A lot of the ones that my mom grows don't ever get it large enough to even like touch the cage. So they're a little bit easier in that sense, and they ripen a little bit earlier in the season because they don't have all that like extra growing time. Indeterminate tomatoes will just grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. And one of the questions that Taylor sent me was like, how do you prune your tomatoes, and something about having like 3 stems, which I'd never actually heard of before. My guess is it has something to do with like getting light into the like center of the plant. But I never heard of that before. Pruning, if you do have indeterminate plants, pruning is good, can be a good thing, because what you'll do is you'll control the size, and once you start pruning, the plant will stop sending energy to pushing new growth, and it'll start sending energy to fruit production. So you prune it, the fruit can ripen faster. It won't necessarily happen earlier in the season, but from beginning to end, it'll be a little bit quicker because it's not trying to like upkeep this huge mass of plant. Heirloom varieties tend to more often be indeterminate. Usually it will tell you on the seed packet or on like the plant tag. If it doesn't, I'm sure Google knows. I don't, there's so many varieties of tomatoes that yeah, so that's it. Do you know that much about blossom end rot? Because I don't.
I know we experienced it last year. I hadn't heard of it actually before last year, but we noticed that a lot of our tomatoes would just like, one end of the tomato would be kind of like black when the rest looked totally healthy. This can happen because of fluctuating between dry and wet soil. We had some troubles with our irrigation, which we're luckily getting fixed now, but I think that likely was an issue that led to our blossom end rot. Also, calcium deficiency can be a problem that would lead to that. High phosphorus fertilizer can help solve this issue, or a rot stop treatment. But if you do run into this, you don't need to be scared of the tomatoes. Like, even if it's rotted on one end, like if you cut off every part that looks bad, the rest of it is good. I know this because I've looked it up, and also I've eaten a ton of tomatoes that like came from our garden because we didn't feel good about selling them or giving them away, I mean, with the raw on them. So don't be scared if you do run into this. It's a thing that a lot of gardeners experience.
You just like this little tomato in the corner.
Yeah, they'll just be a little sad.
Still tasty.
Yeah.
Okay, what else? Oh, I think that's all we have. Does anyone have any questions?
With the blossom end rot, or I don't remember what it was called, with the tomatoes, you said it's because it's fluctuating between like dry and wet soil. Is that like for some reason it wasn't being watered, or it's being watered too much, or like I am a beginning gardener, so do they need to be watered like multiple times a day? Is that what it's referring to?
It depends. I think this like fluctuation between wet and dry is like really extreme. So it's really dry for a long time and then it's too wet. So it's what you said, it's kind of both. You don't want it to be too wet for too long. You don't want it to be too dry. Since I moved out, I've mostly just done container gardening, and that tends to need water more frequently just because there's less soil to hold moisture. In Utah summers, though, like on really, really hot days, like watering in the morning and then giving it a little something in the evening, like dusk-ish, can be helpful. But yeah, in the hottest days, definitely at least once a day. What would you say, Ella?
Yeah, I was just gonna say check your plants every day. Because I think tomatoes, if you think about tomatoes themselves, they're really watery and like they need that water to be able to be healthy. And yeah, like I work in the garden sometimes 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. in the summer, and I would water everything between 6 and 7 a.m. and like it'll look dry by 10 a.m. So that's just a sign that like it does dry out quickly. And if you're watering them every day, they should be okay. And just check the soil. Like if you see that the soil's dry, give it some water.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
We had a question in the chat about strawberries and fruit.
Tracy, can you be a little bit more specific about strawberries and fruit? Like what about them?
I don't know much about strawberries. That's all I can tell you.
They'll like get up and well, they won't get up, but year after year they'll like migrate. Oh, what to plant with? Well, I don't specifically have. So right here, strawberry is like a specific companion plant with lettuce. Strawberries are like a vining plant, so I would say other things that are vining, like beans and squash and cucumbers and melons and stuff, probably wouldn't vibe as much with strawberries because they'd get all like tangled together and just be competing for light at that low level. But strawberries with upright like lettuce probably would also work with corn. Yeah. What other fruit could you think of?
Onions and garlics might be good. I've
yeah.
planted strawberries before. So they're not really difficult plants to work with, I would say. They're easy to handle, so no worries, just plant them.
That's my advice all over the place. No worries, just put it in the ground and see if it grows.
Yeah, and just prune the runners because they could be, they could create some difficulties. Just get rid of them.
And I would say melons, at least to me, I treat melons and squash similarly. They just seem, I feel like they have similar growth patterns and the plants themselves seem similar. So I don't know if like technically this is an okay thing for me to say, but I would say it's reasonable to assume to do the same things for melons and squash. And there's lots of fruit that grows on trees, and I don't know a ton about that.
I know that melons need a ton of water. So Emma was asking about like watering habits throughout the day. Melons need like more water than anything else in the garden usually. So if it's like really hot, I would check on your melons a couple times a day. Because if you think a watermelon, it is literally just all water. So a lot of heat, like direct sunlight, it likes those hot temperatures. But if you don't give it enough water, they'll struggle a lot.
Also, runners, from my understanding, are like when a plant, yeah, okay, cool. Like when a plant like shoots like new growth off to the side, it's like it's running away from from the place that it originally came out of the ground.
Need a cage or stick to climb. How long might a zucchini? Oh, how long does it take for a zucchini seed to sprout? For cages, zucchini, it depends on how much space you have. If you have like a small plot, a couple zucchini plants will probably take up your whole plot. A zucchini leaf could be about bigger than my face, depending on like how much water you're giving it and how well it's doing in the soil. So I would probably recommend growing zucchini. There's like these really cool, I think there's like, was it on this slide that where was the runner slide? Gardening. This picture on the edge, you can see the cucumbers like hanging down underneath it. I've never done that before, but it looks like an amazing strategy because sometimes your like zucchini or melon will like be on the ground, and that part that's like on the ground will get like deformed or like extra dirty, or the skin will get kind of tough, which is like not a big deal. It's still edible, but if you want like those nice long perfect ones, I think that would be like a great way to do it. So I would give it like a big runner or some sort of trellis to go up on. As far as grow time, not seeds, if you start them in the right time, will pop up in like 14-ish days. Does that sound right, Ella?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
feel like if you have a seed packet for zucchini seeds, it should hopefully give you an estimate. It'll say like days to germination or something, and that should be roughly how many days it would take. But I would expect some variety, like 1 to 3 weeks, if it says 2 weeks.
Yeah. Also, specifically with like seed growing and germination, seeds like to stay more wet than their plant does. So if you start seeds inside, what I'll do is I'll like keep the soil consistently moist all the time. Like I won't let it dry out, because that moisture kind of like softens the shell so that the plant can get out easier. That's like the only way the plant will grow. So even if you plant them outside, keeping them consistently wet until they like start to pop up is a good idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
So I've done a lot of gardening in Northern California, and I'm kind of concerned about the weather in Utah and the type of the soil. I guess based on what you just said, this is my first time gardening in Salt Lake City. I should be careful with watering my plants, maybe even twice daily, right? That might be the only real difference.
I mean, I've never planted anywhere other than Utah, but if you have like, I don't know if your community garden uses like compost in the soil at all, but if the soil is good, I mean, like Ella was saying, the plants want to grow. So the only thing would be water. And I usually check mine like before I leave for work in the morning. And then when I get home from work, if they're wilting and they're looking like they need a little bit extra, I'll give it to them. But if they're not, I'll let them go through the night. So it is mostly, I just play it by ear.
Cool, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Also, a general watering tip, watering at early in the day and late in the day is good, because then you're avoiding the hot times of day. If you water when it's cooler, that lets the water stay in the soil for a little bit longer, so it has a chance to actually reach the plant itself as opposed to just evaporating quickly. So that's why I like to water at like 6 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to water that early. You can water at like 10 and it would be fine.
Yeah, also very meditative to water your garden 6 a.m.
Yes, it is.
I love it, honestly. My 6 to 7 a.m. hour is so special to me. Just watering my plants.
Yeah, I can't wait for that.
I have another question. Sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
I've noticed in some gardens people have put like ditches almost between their plants. Is there a benefit to doing that, or does it just depend on the plant?
Were they like, so it was like the plant was here and the ditch was here and then the plant was there?
Yeah, so they had like rows almost, and in between the rows they have ditches. And I mean, I'm sure they know what they're doing more than I do, but I was just wondering if there's a benefit to doing that.
I don't think I've ever done that in a garden that I've had. What I mentioned about like making a little well around your plant, especially if it's a new start. The only thing I can think of is to like hold water in that little well. But if it's next to the plant instead of like around it, I'm not sure. Maybe they have like too much water and they're trying to drain water away from their plants. It could go either way. I don't know. Ella?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that practice.
Me neither.
Okay, I was just wondering if there was some secret gardening trick that I was missing out on.
Man,
Emma,
if there is, I want in.
Yeah,
I've thought the exact same thing. I see that every year and I'm like, should I be doing that? So you're not alone, and I haven't done it before. So
If it's not
Okay,
for the purpose of organization,
Hmm.
maybe that's
that
might
makes
be.
sense.
Oh, also something that I didn't quite mention before, but your comment about organization reminded it of me. Oh, and there's a lot of like empty dirt space. Um, advantages and disadvantages to this. One advantage is you give your plant a lot of space to grow, and so it'll like eventually move into that space. But if there's too much space in between, that's when the weeds like to sneak in. So if you want to outcompete the weeds, denser gardens can be helpful. But if you like to weed a lot, then go for it.
Could you repeat the first part? Your voice kind of broke up.
For sure. I was just saying that plants, like sparsely planted, gives more room for the weeds to grow. So if you do dense or plant more densely and kind of intermingle your plants instead of having them all nice and organized out in their lone little spaces, you can outcompete the weeds a little bit better.
I see. Cool.
Okay, we have a question. What kind of fertilizer is recommended for growing zucchini and lettuce? I don't know this off the top of my head. Some plants draw different nutrients from the soil. Google is a good reference. Utah State University is known for its agriculture programs. So they have a ton of really helpful resources online that I would think might be useful in finding this out. Also, just like generic fertilizer is going to be more helpful than nothing in most situations if you're interested in that. Sorry, I don't have a better answer than that.
Well,
Thank
Also,
you.
another
Okay.
Sorry,
I-
just a little tidbit about Utah State University. If you want to be crazy about it and like really know how your soil is doing, you can send a soil sample to Utah State. I don't know exactly like what department it is or whatever, but I'm guessing somewhere on the internet this exists. And they'll send you a full report of like the nutrient content and the organic material content of your soil. So that can help you determine what you might need to do to like supplement your soil or what crops you might want to grow to help the soil in some way. That's like pretty advanced though.
yeah, nerdy.
Yeah, seriously. Not
And-
necessary most of the time, but it's pretty fun.
I was gonna add that I usually use, as you mentioned, the generic fertilizers. Like I usually use Miracle-Gro for vegetables and herbs, and it basically is good for any kind of vegetables or herbs. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I use that too. It doesn't fail me.
Yeah.
Seeding. This is a Utah State University website, and it is so specific. This fruit, vegetable, herbs page. It has just column after column after column of any vegetable you could ever want to plant in your garden. You click on it, it tells you how to seed it, how it likes to be watered, what types of fertilizers it likes to use. So, I wonder if I can. I'll make sure that Taylor has these slides so that she can send them to you all. As like Elle was talking about, a butterfly garden one, so not just bee friendly, but like monarch friendly. They're a wonderful resource for creating spaces. And then the companion almanac, which is where that companion plant slide mostly came from. I need to turn a light on in my house. It's really dark. I'll be back. Hi, kitty.
Do we have any other questions?
Thank
Thank
you.
you all for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. I think the information was very useful.
Good.
Yay.
Yeah, Sam and Ella, thank you so much. That was like very enlightening. And you said you'll send me the slides, and so
Yeah.
that was awesome. And then also we recorded this, so I'll probably just send it out to the people who aren't able to come, or if you want to replay something, you'll be able to just listen to it again. Yeah, that was really great.
Glad you like.
So,
Get
yeah,
out planting. It's gonna be so nice this weekend.
I know it really is. I think a lot of people are going to be out in their gardens. So
Good.
okay, well, if no one has any other questions, then you guys are free to go. And thank you so much for popping in.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. It's very helpful.
Good.
You're welcome. Happy gardening.
I'm just waiting.
That was a hoot.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was great. You guys are awesome. I'm like, I wish I like knew more of this stuff. I'm like, I should have gone into some sort of gardening something.
Well, there's always time to do that in your free
That's
time. You
true.
don't have to get educated on it.
My husband was sitting next to me. He's like, wow, this is so interesting. Like just things. I mean, we haven't been gardening a lot, but we've been gardening for a couple of years and just wish we would have known some of this stuff. So
Good.
yeah,
Good. I'm
thank you
glad.
so much.
Aaron, I
Oh,
on your child.
oh, thank you so much. Yes. Yep, I'm holding her right now. I'm glad I was able to get on. I didn't think I was going to be able to. So thank you, Daniel, for starting the meeting off because it was a rough time at 8 o'clock.
Happy to help wherever I
Yeah,
can.
thank you. Yeah, and then yeah, I'll just wait for you guys to email me those slides. They were super cool, but people will get them also in the recording. So
Cool. All right.
okay.
Have a nice evening.
You guys have a good night. Thank you.